Production of Kansas City Week in Review is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, Smithfield Foods, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Moving on, President Trump taps the Kansas governor for an ambassador post. What next for Kansas? Flooded and powerless, dissecting the Metro's response to a destructive series of storms. Our countdown to Election Day continues. We look at why so many candidates are taking on the mayor of Wyandotte County, plus deadline day for KCI, and why is our local congresswoman this week in such hot demand on all the networks?
What a week it has been. Hello, everyone. I'm Nick Haynes. So much news to sort through. Just trying to make sense of it all for us. Mr. Up to Date, the host of Up to Date on KCUR-FM, Steve Kraske. From the Shawnee Mission Post, Jay Center. The senior writer for the Call newspaper, Eric Wesson, and columnist and star editorial writer, Dave Helling. 9 months after the rumors first started, it is now official. Sam Brownback departing Kansas and taking a job in the Trump administration. President Trump this week picking the Kansas governor as his ambassador at large for international religious freedom. Housed at the State Department, the post created nearly 20 years ago monitors and responds to global threats to religious freedom. This is not a made-up job by Donald Trump. It's been around since 1998. Barack Obama picked out rabbi for the post, so this is not about trumpeting Christian beliefs around the world. So why did Brownback want this job, and why did Trump want him, Steve?
Well, Nick, no one doubts how deeply felt Governor Brownback's religious convictions are, and no one doubts his interest in spreading religious freedom, ensuring religious freedom around the globe. I think the other side of the equation is here, it was simply time for him to go. If everyone knows the story about how the tax cuts didn't work and how the legislature reversed him this year, I go back to a moment a couple of years ago at a KU Wichita State basketball game. The governor was, his attendance at the game was announced, and the crowd booed. The home state crowd booing their own governor. You don't see that very often. I'm told that was a really tough moment for Governor Brownback and a sign that perhaps his time was up.
Now, this is a position, though, that does require Senate approval, Dave Helling. So this is not a done deal. Couldn't this linger on for months upon months upon months?
It particularly because the Democrats in the Senate are slow-walking just about every nomination from the Trump administration, in part because of their anger over health care reform. So it isn't clear how quickly they can take up this nomination. You need hearings, and then you need a full Senate vote. That could, at minimum, and by the way, they're headed for the August break. So at minimum, it will be September or October before the Senate likely takes up this nomination. Now, whether the governor can resign and take a recess appointment or there are other mechanisms isn't completely clear. So he could go at some point in the near to intermediate future, but he's not leaving today. He's not leaving next week, as far as we know. He will, at least for some time frame, still be the governor in Kansas.
Much of the conversation this week, Jay Center, is on who is replacing Sam Brownback, and under Kansas law, then that means his running mate, the lieutenant governor, which in this case is a Overland Park plastic surgeon by the name of Jeff Collier, will take that spot. I noticed that the leading Democrat in the Kansas House telling reporters this week, quote, "I don't expect much difference with the new governor." Jeff Collier has walked in lockstep with Sam Brownback for the last 6.5 years. But is that really the case? I mean, is there any distance between these two men, or is that misstated?
Well, from an ideological perspective, there really isn't a whole lot of oxygen between the two of them. Collier has been a staunch supporter of Brownback, and his agenda has lent quite a bit of money to his campaign over the years. But Collier has not been a very conspicuous presence on the Kansas political scene. So I think the biggest difference between the two of them is that sort of counterintuitively, Collier's probably in a much better position to actually reach out to and start working kind of with a fresh slate with the legislature on dealing with the budget issues that are going to continue to be a big deal over the next couple of sessions.
Is there differences between them, Steve?
Boy, I agree with Jay, Nick, not much. When it comes to privatizing Medicaid, they were in lockstep. When it comes to expanding Medicaid, the same. Opposing abortion rights, both of them very much together there, Nick. You know, if Dave's point is correct and there's a time lag here before Jeff Collier takes over, that's only going to work against him. He needs time to establish himself, perhaps find a way to put some distance between himself and Governor Sam Brownback to establish his own identity as governor. That's going to take time.
Just quickly, the other dynamic at work is whether or not Jeff Colyer will run for governor in 2018. And whether, if he decides to do that, whether he feels he needs to make or establish some distance between himself and Governor Brownback. Chris Kobach, we know, is running. Chris Kobach, in essence, has already staked out the third term for Sam Brownback space in that race. So there may be some political incentive for Colyer to move a little bit more to the center. I would watch Medicaid expansion. It was almost enacted over the governor's veto in the last session. That might be a place where Jeff Colyer, who's an expert in Medicaid, might be able to strike some sort of deal, particularly now since Obamacare looks like it's going to remain in place.
And I wanted to go back to something that Dave has stated earlier about recess. Is there going to be a Senate recess? Because one of the concerns is that during that recess that he would get rid of Sessions and then appoint another Attorney General without having them go through the vetting process through Congress. So the question is going to remain whether or not the Senate actually goes into recess.
Correct.
So that might be an issue for Brownback if he's trying to get in through that way. But he's pretty clean. I don't think they'll find a whole lot on him to keep him from being appointed to that position.
For most people here in the Metro, the biggest story of the week was the weather. Close to 140,000 families are left without power as a strong storm whips through the area. As utility crews work for days in brutal heat to repair downed lines, another powerful storm brings with it widespread flooding, leaving sections of the city several feet underwater and prompting numerous high-risk rescue missions. When snow hits the Metro, we track how the city responds. What about the response to this storm? Jay Center, you were tracking a lot of the devastation that was impacting your coverage area. Were Shawnee Mission Post readers angry with the response, or did they understand this is what it means to live in a weather volatile area right here in the heart of the country?
You know, when you're coming up on 48 or 72 hours after a major storm like that and you still don't have power, even if you're trying to be as charitable as possible, it starts to get pretty frustrating. But in KCP&L's defense, I mean, the nature of this storm where you had these 60-year-old mature oak trees completely falling over, not just branches, but the entire tree itself. You're snapping power poles, you're snapping the electrical lines. You have to send several crews out there. You have to send the tree crew, the pole crew, and the line crew to get these repairs made. So given how widespread the damage was and the severity of the damage, I don't know that there's a whole lot more that KCP&L could have done to be prepared for this kind of event.
We got lots of emails here. Bill in South Kansas City emailed KCPT asking, is this an epic failure of KC's infrastructure after spending hundreds of millions of dollars to fix floodwater and sewer systems, Steve?
Well, no, it's not an epic failure. Those general obligation bonds that were in part designed to improve flood control just passed in April. They're 20-year bonds. That work is going to go on for a while, Nick, before people can expect improvements in that area.
So just quickly, there was a pretty interesting story in the Star today about Indian Creek, which is in the southern part of the city along 103rd Street, basically the metro area, both Kansas and Missouri. When I was at Channel 4 in the 1980s, we did a flood story, and we identified 4 problem areas: Brush Creek, Turkey Creek, Blue River, and Indian Creek. The first 3 have been dealt with. They've spent $250 million on Blue River. Turkey Creek, we know, has gotten federal money. Brush Creek, of course, the Cleaver Plan, all the changes along Brush Creek. Indian Creek remains unaddressed, and we had flooding there again this week, including some pretty dramatic flooding that required a rescue. That may be the next place to put
But these
our
were
attention.
some record high levels of water, though. Is it unfair to blame the city for that?
It is, because the water came down so much so fast. And as you got upstream or downstream, however the water was moving, then it all centered in that area. But to the list that he just named, Town Fork Creek, those people get it really bad.
And Line Creek north of the river, there are plenty of watersheds that still have problems.
Yeah, and so that area, Indian Creek, they built those car dealers around there. They have done some infrastructure around there to make it look good, but is it feasible? I think we just saw that it really isn't. And that water came up pretty high. To have people have to climb up on the attic to get out of the building. So.
Now, this is our last show before Election Day on August 8th. Voters on both sides of state line will be voting in primary elections and for special ballot questions. Last week, we analyzed how there are 3 streetcar questions being decided in August in Kansas City. And while that's getting some news attention, over on the other side of state line, a crowded field of candidates running for mayor of Wyandotte County. 4 candidates challenging Mayor Mark Holland as he seeks re-election, including State Senator David Haley and an elected member of the Board of Public Utilities also running there. Why aren't we hearing about that race? And what are the issues that have so many people upset with Mayor Mark Holland, Steve?
Well, one reason the race is a little low profile, Nick, is because Ann Murguia, who's a sitting commissioner who ran against Mark Holland 4 years ago, decided not to run this time. That would have been kind of a high-profile grudge match, if you will, and it didn't materialize. But yeah, you do see several candidates lining up against the mayor. You know, he's been in office for 4 years. He's been a mayor of some consequence, and that always gins up some opposition. I was moderated a forum in KCK just the other night about this. One of the big complaints from David Alvey, one of Mayor Mark Holland's opponents, David said that the mayor has a style that alienates people. The commission's still split, and you've also got a sense that in a community where there are so many needs, so many things need to get done, there's always a certain frustration with leadership because leadership simply can't go fast enough.
Mayor Holland, though, saying he's created 11,000 jobs in Wyandotte County since he was elected 4 years ago. That's simply not enough for some people, Eric?
It depends on where those jobs are. If those jobs are out by the Legend area, then that's fine for the people there. And I did one of those forums, too, as a moderator. I think one of the things that people had in the city was that no grocery stores. It looks the same as it did 6 years ago, which means that his 4 years in office, he hasn't done anything to change that. So,
and it was just a couple of weeks on the program, Dave Helling, we were talking about the city, the county bailing out even further with more money the Community America T-Bone Stadium.
Right. And there is continually a tension in Wyandotte County between the relative success of the Legends area around the ballpark, Cerner, and all of the excitement and growth in that area, and whether or not any of it trickles down to the eastern part of Wyandotte County in Kansas City, Kansas. And there continues to be some concern that it is not moving there quickly enough. In addition, Kansas City, Kansas has a problem very similar to Kansas City, Missouri in terms of abandoned housing problems, downtrodden neighborhoods, crime to some degree. And when that happens, any mayor is going to come in for some criticism, and Mark Holland isn't an exception.
Now, earlier this year, we shared with you on the program that the mayor of Overland Park is facing his first opponent for re-election since he became leader of the metro's second largest city a decade ago. Former state lawmaker Charlotte O'Hara running against Gerlach for a job that pays $32,000 a year. You can hear Eric Wesson so choked up about this, he's emotional about it. Anyway, but I was looking through the sample ballot in Kansas, Jay Center, and I noticed that race is not even listed on the August 8th primary. Why not?
Because there's only one other candidate who's entered the race to challenge Carl Gerlach. He is a very strong candidate. You have to have 3 or 4 candidates, depending on the kind of race, to trigger a primary.
So that will be in November.
That'll be in November. It'll be on the general election ballot. But you could be forgiven for thinking that there was a primary because she's been a pretty vocal, outgoing candidate so far. Her big issue is public financing incentives. She thinks the city of Overland Park has way overused them. She shows up at every city council meeting and talks about it. She'll continue to do so.
No, there are slews of smaller mayoral, city council, school board races being decided in Kansas and Missouri. Now, we can't laser in on all of them. What's the one that's prompting the most public interest and why, Jay?
I think by a pretty wide margin in Johnson County, it's the Shawnee Mission School Board primaries. First of all, there hasn't in more than a decade been a primary for a school board election, and I have not been able to track down the last time a sitting incumbent lost. There's a very real possibility that when the ballots are counted on Tuesday, you could have 2 sitting incumbents who don't even emerge from the primary. Cindy Neighbor and Craig Denny are the 2 incumbents who are up for re-election. Neighbor's in the at-large space. Denny's in the Shawnee Mission West space. I'd be very, very surprised if Cindy Neighbor emerged just based on the energy around the candidate, some of the other campaigns.
So what are people aggravated about there?
There has been a growing sense of discontent over the past year, especially with a number of the votes that the board has taken. There are complaints about the fact that they're not transparent. They have given raises to the superintendent on a consent agenda without ever discussing it in public. They moved to bring assault rifles into the school district without ever really making a public stance about it. There are major transparency issues, and with Jim Henson gone, the superintendent, the board is going to be tasked with finding a new superintendent early next year. So these new board members want to have a seat at the table and make that decision.
Did anybody else pick any other race that we need to be paying attention to that may not be?
I would say just pay attention to the issue questions in Missouri. We have in Kansas City, Missouri, we've got one on the streetcar, one on the minimum wage, which will have a great psychological impact, but not necessarily a legal one, as we know from the state of Missouri. And then there's also the Clay Chastain proposal that would initiate some sort of rail-based transit in Kansas City and raise sales taxes. Keep an eye on all three of those. And by the way, we should remind viewers, it's the first election in Kansas City that requires photo ID. So if you want to cast your ballots in August, be sure and take a picture ID to the ballot box, to your voting booth, because you may be asked to present it if you want to cast a ballot.
Eric.
Don't underestimate the Wyandotte County Sheriff's race. I think that's going to be an interesting race if the network of people that would support the incumbent don't get together, because they've got a pretty viable set of candidates for over there.
Steve.
You know, I picked the Shawnee Mission School District, Nick. I agree with Jay for all the reasons he cited. It's a hot race.
Thursday was deadline day for companies wanting to make a bid to build a new single terminal at KCI Airport. It was also the day the City Council was set to debate an ordinance calling for the city to bypass private companies and have the city fund and build the project. We don't want this program turning into the KCI drama show every week, yet I know it's important. So what did we learn that was new? Were there any surprises worth reporting on, Dave?
Well, I don't want to turn it into drama either, but it's pretty dramatic. Actually, there are 4 bidders. Four companies have stepped forward. 2 we sort of knew about. Burns & Mac, of course, AECom, what they're calling the KCI partnership, and the 2 other companies, Edgemore Infrastructure, which I think is out of Maryland, and then a company called, I think, Blue Slope, lesser known, certainly will present bids, but it really seems like it's a competition between Burns & Mac and AECom. There was movement, too, on the public versus private financing. It's now becoming more and more apparent that the model involves what they call conduit financing, which means it won't be the city issuing the debt, it'll be some agency like the Port Authority. That may take that discussion a bit off the table, at least as far as voters are concerned. They're facing an enormous deadline, Nick. They've got to figure most of this out by August 24th. They think they can get there, but it's going to be tight.
Did you learn anything new, or was there anything surprising to you, Eric, this week?
No, other than they start playing the Burns & Mac commercial more on the radio. I think I've heard it like 5 or 6 times within an hour. So that was something that was interesting, and that's getting Burns & Mac out there for people to think about, more so supporting or calling their Congress or city council person and get them to select them as the company.
You know, not to be lost in the shuffle here, Nick, this notion that any sort of single terminal plan is a done deal is really missing the mark here. The polling on this issue has consistently been against the idea of voters voting for a single terminal thing. There's a lot of work that has to be done in September and October in terms of public relations and marketing here to get voters behind this thing. It's going to be fascinating to see how this whole thing plays out.
By the way, a clarification on last week's conversation where it was stated on this show that Burns & McDonnell was paying contractors to sign exclusivity deals with them. The company says no cash changed hands. All of them wanted, they tell me, to be part of the Burns & McDonnell team. Yes, this is a Kansas City, Missouri story, but I did notice that the Leawood City Council is now holding public hearings on a new single terminal. If Kansas residents can't vote on this, why are Johnson County cities now weighing in, Jay?
Well, I kind of get into Steve's point. It's part of the public relations effort. If you're connecting the dots, the mayor of Leawood is Peggy Dunn, who is married to Terry Dunn, who's the president of J.E. Dunn. Peggy Dunn is closely associated with the Casey Chamber, which is way behind it. You would sort of assume that maybe J.E. Dunn would think it had an interest.
You may be forcing me to do another clarification next week, okay, on that point. All right, thank you for that. Well, this week, the 2 candidates shortlisted to be the next chief of police in Kansas City met with the public for the first time.
I have to lead with integrity. I have to be a person of my word.
No one in Kansas City wants to get up and see the shell casings or hear the shots fired all the time.
At police headquarters downtown, citizens got to size up Rick Smith, the current commander of the Central Patrol Division, and Keith Humphrey, chief of police in Norman, Oklahoma. One an insider, one an outsider. What did we learn, if anything, from their interaction with citizens, Eric?
Really not a whole lot. Most of their answers seemed like they were scripted. They were pretty much within the realm of what people wanted to hear. In all honesty, probably Rick Smith will get the job, but there's a lot of opposition to him, and there was a lot of opposition that we heard.
What is the opposition?
The opposition is that both black officers and white officers say that he's not a leader type person, even though he's a commander in some of the units. Jean Peters Baker was very outspoken against him, and it's going to be interesting to have a prosecutor and a chief of police that don't get along. In fact, she was one of the reasons why he was removed from Nova. The Catholic community has some very serious concerns about the issue with Bishop Finn and him not doing what needed to be done with that case when he first got the information about it. I think that it's going to be a real serious setback in race relations. I hope I'm wrong, and people can call me and say that or email me and say that I'm wrong, but I think it's going to be a real setback if he gets in there between the black community and the police department and his interaction with the police department.
Now, we actually tape this program on a Friday morning, and I understand it is very possible by the time this program airs Friday night, or you're seeing this on our Sunday rebroadcast, that the new police chief could have been picked, Dave Helling.
Right. There's some indication from members of the board that they'll interview people as we're speaking here on Friday morning and then reach some sort of decision and hire the new chief either today or over the weekend. But it's possible they'll wait too. There may be some things learned in those interviews or last night that would extend the process. I think the idea is to get it done quickly because the murder problem continues to grow and they want somebody in charge.
Well, let's get into that for a moment, Steve, because we're getting lots of emails here. Janet writes, is all the talk about KCI and streetcar expansion distracting the mayor and city leaders from fixing a now shockingly high murder rate? One of the local TV stations reported there have been 85 murders, a 50% increase on last year. Is the focus being diluted by these projects, as Janet writes, or can our elected leaders keep multiple balls in the air at the same time?
Well, I think they can keep multiple balls in the air at the same time, Nick. I would just caution your listeners that, hey, you know, the murder rate is high. Kansas City's got a big problem here. But the notion that one of these men who are vying for chief, Rick Smith or Keith Humphrey, is going to somehow come into office and magically address and fix the homicide problem in Kansas City is a misplaced ambition here, because the problem is so much more complex than just city leadership and the police department. It has to do with poverty and education and all those other issues you hear so much about. And as I've written in the Star, citizens need to take a greater accounting here and get more engaged in what's going on in their own cities to help an issue like this.
The controversy over the Jackson County Jail escalating this week. Did the head of Jackson County government, Frank White, really try to have the Jackson County Sheriff removed from office in a spat over yet more jailhouse problems? That's what the Star is reporting this week, when the Jackson County Sheriff, Mike Sharp, said his officers will no longer respond to all calls for assistance from the jail. It's claimed staffers in the Jackson County Executive's office went looking for ways to remove the sheriff from office. Let's be blunt here, Dave Helling. Is Frank White really trying to can Jackson County Sheriff Mike Sharp?
Well, I'll be equally blunt. Something is going on. Something that we said in the paper this week is just really a distraction from an enormous problem, which is the way the jail is being operated. In essence, what happened is this. At a meeting a couple of weeks ago, one of the legislators asked Frank White if he thought it might be time for the sheriff's department to start running the jail, which has, as we said, murders and some other problems. And Frank White said, no, I don't think the time is here yet. The next day, Mike Sharp put out a memo that said our officers are no longer going to respond to criminal problems in the jail unless they were Part 1 offenses, murder, rape, that kind of thing in the jail. Other than that, let somebody else take care of it. So then the county said, okay, can he do that? And if not, can we force him from office? When I say county, I mean Frank White and his office. Can we force Mike Sharp from office for issuing that memo? It's a needless, ridiculous 8-year-old second grader spat when the real problem is the jail is overcrowded, it's unsanitary, it's unsafe, it's aging, its guards are underpaid and undertrained. that's what we've said you need to focus on, and not this back and forth between the sheriff and the county executive.
You know, I didn't know, why is it, you know, jails all across the country are having issues with jails and actually overcrowding and issues of trying to find officers to work in jails. And why is it we never hear things about this, say, in the Johnson County Jail, Jay Center?
Well, it's a different inmate population. It's a different organizational culture, and I think the facilities are probably in better shape.
But I did note in the Johnson County Sheriff's race last year, they said the number one issue was we can't find officers to work there.
And that's law enforcement across Johnson County right now, and probably across the country. I think that all the candidates in the sheriff's race noted that was the biggest pressure they're facing, but it hasn't really bled through into creating real issues in the jails.
Last week it was Kansas Senator Jerry Moran making national news for killing the Republicans' new health care bill. This week it's another local member of Congress in the national news spotlight.
Vicky Hartzler of Missouri. She's a member of the Armed Services Committee in the House.
Hartzler's amendment proposed blocking the use of taxpayer money for transgender surgery for service members.
You may not hear much about Missouri Republican Vicky Hartzler from nearby Harrisonville, but she's all over the news networks in connection with the president's decision to block transgender Americans from serving in the military. There are 100 senators, 435 representatives in Congress. Why is Vicky Hartzler being singled out somehow as the impetus behind what was a decision by the president himself, Steve?
Well, she's been pushing behind the scenes for exactly this kind of thing to happen, Nick, and so she's inserted herself into a conversation. It strikes me is that she's very much playing to her Republican base here, that the number of transgender officers, people in the military, is so small as to be a few ants in a giant anthill here. It's not a big issue, but she has made it one here.
But that can't hurt her politically in her district, can it?
Probably not. But one of the interesting things about her position is that she says it frees up more money because of the money that they spend on transgenders. Surgeries and medical things, that puts more money into the actual military. And I don't think she has a platform in which to really make that argument.
And that is our Week in Review. Our thanks to our news reviewers, Steve Kraske and Eric Wesson, Jay Center and Dave Helling. I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us here at KCPT, thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.